Like most parents, when it came time to start teaching my daughter about how to manage money, I started to give her a small allowance so that she could save up to buy the things she wanted, between birthdays and Christmas and major holidays. Somehow, she seemed to inherently be very good at saving money. And by saving, what I mean is, she never wanted to spend her money, but still managed to come up with passionate requests for things she wanted me to buy for her. I must have made a mistake at some point and offered to subsidize a purchase. I don't remember the particular incident, but I know we went through a period of time that lasted for several years when she wanted something and I told her how much it cost. She would ask, "But how much does it cost me?" If the necklace she wanted cost $50, she would seriously ask, as if there were some automatic princess discount, "But how much would it cost me?" Somehow her money was always more precious than my money. My money was fluid and evidently an endless resource. Her money was like a family heirloom to be treasured and never to be parted with. It's possible that she learned this perspective from her mother, but it would be rude for me to speculate about that here. My daughter's question, though, continues to be a part of our entire culture. Countries that have universal health care may have free medical service at the point of receiving medical care, but that doesn't mean it's free. It costs everybody something. Someone is paying for it somehow. In most cases, there's no charge to drive down our city streets, or for calling the fire department or the police department, or for sending our children to public schools. And yet all of these things actually cost a great deal of money. What is disturbing to many of our peers is the simple fact that the United States is not, on the whole, a capitalist country. Our economy is more socialist than it is capitalist. We just don't allow ourselves to be made very aware of that fact. I've always found it odd that, with rare exception, even the most conservative among us do not object to the fact that kindergarten through high school is provided free of charge to the families that use it. However, when it is suggested that community colleges and state universities should be made tuition free, then we begin to hear shouts protesting socialism. We have free public schools because we are a better and more prosperous society if most of our citizens are literate. But most countries in the world realize that they will have an even better and more prosperous society if those who are able to receive it are also given access to either specialized training or advanced degrees. As some kind of trade school or college education becomes more and more crucial to economic success in our country, we will become an increasingly economically tiered society if only the children of the affluent can afford to go to college. Looking at this map, you should take special note of the fact that the countries in blue are the countries that are providing tuition-free higher education specifically because they are wanting to emerge economically. The fact that Brazil and Argentina and Mexico and even India provide free higher education is part of the reason why you may be getting tired of not being able to find a physician, a physical therapist, or a dentist who is actually from the United States. When you look at this map, you can see why. We are importing professionals to take some of our highest paying jobs because it is simply too expensive for most Americans to even consider going to college long enough to earn those degrees. It may surprise you to learn that there was a time in our country's history when fire departments were not public services, they were actually owned by insurance companies. If you paid a monthly premium to have fire insurance on your house, then if your house caught on fire, the insurance company would send the fire department to put it out. But if your neighbor's house caught on fire and they didn't have the insurance plaque on the front of their house, well, get out the marshmallows, baby, because we're about to watch this thing burn down. But as it turns out, letting my neighbor's house burn is not good for my house. We're all better off if the fire department is dispatched to the houses of the poor as well as to the houses of higher income families, even if doing that adds to my overall tax burden. It still makes it safer and better for me. And when it comes to healthcare, trust me, you don't want to be with me watching television when one of those commercials comes on featuring kids with cancer or serious birth defects begging for donations for life-saving treatments or prosthetics or surgery or wheelchairs. Every other developed country in the world realizes that the whole of society needs to be provided basic health care, and that the richest country in the world, the richest country in the history of the world, still trots out kids with horrible diseases to beg for change from donors to get the care that they need. We Americans have somehow come to simply accept this as being normal, but let me tell you, it's not normal. It's abnormal. And if you travel abroad, it's pretty hard to defend this situation in any other advanced country. I was visiting Copenhagen a few years ago to visit the grave of Soren Kierkegaard. I was only there for 3 days, but that shouldn't come as a surprise to any of our regular listeners. I was sitting in a coffee shop studying a tourist guidebook, and a local dentist struck up a conversation with me. He had immigrated from Iran, and he was so proud of his adopted homeland that he insisted on giving me a tour of the city himself. Waving his arms around as we walked through the world's largest open-air shopping mall, he exclaimed, "Do you notice that there are no beggars in the street, no disabled people begging for help? Sure," he said, "our income tax rate is about 50%, but we don't have a homelessness problem. We have very few people in jail. Higher education is provided by the state, and even with a high tax rate," he said of himself, "I live in a nice house with a view of the ocean. I have 2 cars, lots of time off, and when I travel around the world on vacation." If you ask him, what does it cost you to live in a civilized society, he would tell you that it costs him more than half of what he earns. But unlike most of our American peers, he was very happy to pay it because paying it allowed him to live in an amazing country. What does it cost us to not charge tuition for higher education? What does it cost us to not have universal health care? What does it cost us to not have enough public housing or child care or mental health services? What it costs us, what we pay as a society for not doing what most of Western Europe does, is it costs us a chronic feeling of being unsafe in our city streets, an unwillingness to walk outside at night. It costs us in having panhandlers at every busy intersection. It costs us in having to pay for home security system, and the more paranoid among us buy enough weapons that it seems like they're arming themselves for a coming zombie apocalypse. And it costs us having the highest rate of incarceration in the world. This chart shows incarceration by percentage of population. Now, you might think that maybe Canada wouldn't be that much different from the United States, but the United States has 5 times as many people in prison as they do. Do they not have mental illness in Canada? Do they not have the same social ills that would be inherent to our society? And yet, they only incarcerate 20% of the number that we incarcerate. We incarcerate 10 times as many per capita as Denmark. We have more of our citizens in prison than any other Western nation. And we have 4 million people on parole. Try getting a job with either a criminal record or currently being on parole. It's nearly impossible. So what does it cost us to not pay a living wage to our workers, to not provide educational opportunity for the whole of our population? What does it cost us to limit medical and mental health care? It costs us what we spend on building bigger prisons, for hiring more police, for paying higher insurance premiums. And of course, it costs us by making us afraid to go out at night or ever to ride on public transportation. As it turns out, it costs a lot of money if you insist on being a greedy and cruel society. I know that using words like greedy and cruel may seem harsh, but isn't that what it really comes down to? Still, it is counterintuitive because we end up paying more in taxes to beef up our police force, to build larger prisons, than it would cost us to make healthcare universal and make it easier for people to go to college. And we should be aware that our national greed and cruelty ends up costing you your quality of life, your feelings of safety and security. It makes it hard to go on insisting that this is a great country, whether you make it great again or make it great in the first place. Not if we're going to maintain this kind of cruelty. This is a rich country, but it's a rich country with a lot of poverty and with a whole lot of our citizens in prison. Now, for my entire life, I have drawn a salary from a charity, and not just any nonprofit, but rather a nonprofit that ostensibly provides the exact same services to those who donate as it provides to those who do not donate at all. In fact, in my experience, 40 years in church life, about half of the people who attend church never contribute anything at all that you can record. No checks, no envelopes that you can tie to anyone, and loose offerings in church is typically very small. There were church members during all my career who made very impressive pledges every year as we planned our budget. But over the years, we learned there were certain families to never count their pledge because they never actually contributed a dime. They, in their own minds, were making a commitment to really support the church. But in truth, they never did at all. Oddly enough, the families in question tended to be rather wealthy, and they certainly didn't mind throwing their weight around in board meetings. But in actual fact, they had no skin in the game at all. Now, compare that to hospitals. Hospitals are nonprofits, but trust me, they don't wait for your donations to pay for the services they provide. For all the memes I see on the internet about taxing the churches, I keep wondering why no one's asking to tax the hospitals. They really are a for-profit organization, whereas most churches can barely keep the lights on. But churches are unique in that they need money to survive, but they never bill their users, which is why they tend to talk about money so much. Now, in my own defense, I have not brought up the matter of financially supporting my work for several years. I bring it up now because even though we still have several thousand listeners, we only have about 24 donors, some of whom donate as little as $1 a month. So you do the math. How much of your money will it take to keep me off the pickleball courts for at least a few hours a week? Forgive me for making this so personal, but I'm afraid that it really does need to be said. We are now nearly a generation removed from when people paid for subscriptions to newspapers and magazines. We feel like we get all the content we need from the internet. But I ask you, who is producing that content? Are they reliable? Do they have credible credentials? Increasingly, we are a generation that no longer attends church. But I'm trying to hold on to a little corner of the internet to at least provide a spiritual perspective on current events and public ethics. Our congregation in Springfield, Missouri was the heart of my work for many years. But the pandemic, coupled with my looming retirement age, made us decide to sell our property and, last summer, to stop having services in Springfield at all. So I packed up this pulpit and microphone and moved to Florida, where it has been my plan to continue to work on at least a part-time basis. The church now physically exists in 2 rooms in my home, an office and this recording studio. I believe that healthcare and higher education should be paid for out of the public purse. But I accept that churches, even and perhaps especially an online-only church, only continues to exist when those who value its work will donate enough to keep it afloat. I could charge a download fee, but I've resisted that idea because, just like a bricks and mortar church, I want people to have access to our progressive content, whether they can or whether they will donate or not. In that sense, I'm a real capitalist. My listeners get to vote with donations whether I continue to be employed in this process. When what I do is not sufficiently important to people to support my work, then I'll start going kayaking more often and playing a lot more pickleball. When I sample what other progressive religious content exists online, I still feel like what I'm doing is valuable and contributing to the available content. If you agree, I hope you'll get some skin in the game and partner with me by beginning to support us at whatever level that you can afford. You can donate through PayPal by clicking on our website, www.spfccc.org. Or you can set up monthly donations to come from your bank's bill pay option, which I prefer to giving any cut to PayPal, and send your donations to the Emerging Church at 1015 East 13th Square, Vero Beach, Florida, 32960. I hope that this content matters enough to you for you to become a partner with me in making it available to the world, a world that needs to continue to be awakened to a more ethical and just way of seeing how we run our society. Thank you.
Thank you for watching our videos. We are entirely dependent on the donations of our listeners and members. We hope that you find this content to be important enough to help us to keep offering these videos to the public at no charge by becoming a regular contributor. Please click on the donate button on our website at www.spfccc.org. Thank you for your support of progressive religious programming.